Okay. All right. So let's just jump right into it. I'll start with the a brief profile on myself. So yes, Olukunle is a seasoned human resource professional with over 7 years of experience of or 7 years of progressive experience across diverse HR functions, including HR operations, talent acquisition, performance management, payroll administration, and policy development. He currently leads HR operations at Filmhouse Group, where he drives strategic HR initiatives, ensuring seamless policy implementation, process optimization, and employee experience enhancement for a workforce of over 200 persons. Throughout his career, Kunle has successfully partnered with organizations across industries, including technology, travel and consulting, where he has also executed C-suite recruitments, championed performance management frameworks, and coordinated impactful training interventions. His work consistently reflects a strong focus on efficiency, compliance, and aligning HR processes with business objectives. Kule is known for his ability to build and maintain productive relationships with stakeholders at all levels, combining operational excellence with a people-first approach. Kule is passionate about creating sustainable people strategies that support organizational growth and employee development. In his free time, Kunle enjoys watching movies, reading books, and hanging out with friends. Okay, thank you all once again. My name is Olukunle Unge. I currently work in Famous Group as lead HR operations. And this evening, we'll be looking at the topic legal and ethical considerations in layoffs, balancing compliance, fairness, and organizational needs. Before we dive right into it, I'd like to use the opportunity to thank Dr. Oluyemi for this platform to take a topic on using his well-versed platform, FireRage. Thank you, sir, for the privilege. I do not take it for granted. Okay. So, as HR professionals, I'm very sure that by the time you're already doing 2 years, 3 years, and above in the HR profession, there are certain things that you now get exposed to. If as an HR professional here, you've never had to terminate, to dismiss, or even conduct a company-wide layoff, I celebrate you and I want to say keep breathing. You are one of the very few that have enjoyed what I can call preferential treatment in HR. It is not it's not one of our high days or best days when we are forced or we are faced with the options of having to terminate or dismiss an employee or a group of employees due to one reason or the other, even when they are erring styles, because there are a lot of things that we are always considering because, like it or not, as HRs, there is still the human factor in what we do. However, it is not something that we can run away from. Like I've mentioned, sometimes it's as a result of infractions from the staff, or even because of a realignment of company's goals and objectives. If there's now a change in the direction of the company as a whole, we are then forced to sometimes let go of certain number of people. So it also sets the tone. I know that for some of us, when we are seeing legal and ethical considerations in layoffs, many of us are just thought it's towards just termination and dismissals. You're not wrong, but you're not also entirely right because layoffs really it speaks to redundancy more of than just a termination because of wrongful doings, maybe by way of fraud, by stealing, or even a performance issue. It speaks to layoff redundancy at a bigger level. Redundancy at the level of, let's say, having to let go of an entire department, having to let go of an entire group of people due to various reasons. One very quick example that I know that everybody here can relate to it, or let me just say 80% of people can relate to it. It was during the COVID era when a lot of companies had to reduce drastically their workforce. Many companies went as high as 70% in reduction because well, they just couldn't pay because of the nature of their business. Their business was entirely shut down in that COVID period. So there was no way to pay. Some companies went the route of just holding off pay for that period because since there was no work to do, there was no point in paying people. But there were some companies that could still do one or two skeletal functions. But because also there was not a large ease to getting access to the workplace or work tool, or even because there was a reduction in the utilization of company services, there was a need to also do or to also let go of employees or even reduce or suspend pay. So that is what layoff really is all about. Layoff really is all about that, having to let go of a large number of people at a time due to various reasons that could occur. So why does it even matter for us to even look at the legal and ethical considerations when we are carrying out layoffs? Like I've said, yeah, layoffs it can have a very huge impact on employees. It can have a huge impact on company reputation, and it even has legal implications. Like every single one-on-one or one to two termination and dismissals that we've had to do, these are some of the things that go along with it. And at a large scale like that, you agree with me that if a company has 70 staff and all of a sudden people come to work and then they can't just see 35 more, and the only thing they hear from management or they hear from HR is, oh, we've let them go. You agree with me that it's really going to affect the psyche of a lot of people that are left behind. And even those 35 that has been let go, if they're not taken through the proper ways, if they're not properly exited from the company, and I'm not saying just doing exit interviews here. I'm not saying just doing exit interviews. Like as we go on in the training, we'll see other things that we need to take into consideration. If they're not properly exited from the company, you can open the company up to what? To lawsuits from the aggrieved parties if it's not properly managed. You can even damage the reputation. We live in a time where Twitter, MySpace, social media has now become the social court of every individual. The social court of every individual. I think it was about or was it 4 years ago now when um there was a very big trend online on Twitter, MySpace by tech cabals at that time, where a lot of like it was literally as if they were reporting every single CEO and MD at that time on that space. A particular company got dragged, the CEO had to step down, restructuring happened, and I think about a year or two ago suddenly somebody started a trend on Twitter, which is now X, saying that, oh, HR, talking about HRs. And then there was that trend, the people coming out and saying, oh, this is what HR has done to me, this is what my HR has done here. HR will do this, HR will do that. And many times when rainy season just starts or when there are floods, you see some memes online that say, I'm very sure that HR can see that there's no way to get to the office, but you'll be looking for who went at the office, or that wicked HR that when rain is falling heavily will still make it to the office, all those kind of things. Those are the things that as HR we have to look out for in the course of all of this, in the course of termination, even in the course of retaining employees within the organization, because it's not just at the point of them exiting, it's also at the point of when they are still within the system. Because when you poorly handle layoffs, terminations, or dismissals, there is every likelihood that there will be a reduction in the morale of the staff that are even left behind. The morale of the staff that are left behind, because for like I mentioned, if I have 70, if I'm in a team of five and I come to the office tomorrow and suddenly I can't find three people, it's not like they've told me, oh, they resigned. They didn't tell me the day before that day was the last day. I'm not saying that, oh, they're not feeling fine or something. All of a sudden, I'm not being told we've let them go. It can create a sort of fear in my mind and say, is that how my job would also go? There was a time when there was trend around certain companies that had certain managers, or let me say heads from certain parts of the world. I will try as much as possible during the course of this training not to mention specifics. I'll just use generalizations. That you can come to work and then you try to log in and you can't log in on your laptop. That's when you know, or on your system, that's when you know that what you've been laid off. Or you try to access the building with your ID card and that's when you're not able to go in. That's when they not tell you that, oh, sorry, you no longer work here. All of these things over time is what, as HR, we've been able to change, even with the laws, labor laws that have now come into place, they've been able to change. But however, when we're handling layoffs, we need to be careful a lot of this because well, we can get to a point where there's a vote of no confidence and there's even a public backlash from the entire public. Like I said, internet has now become the social court on which everybody charges one another to, or an aggrieved party charges someone else too. There have been times, many times on social media where someone has been aggrieved, maybe by telecommunications offering or by services that they were meant to receive, they did not, but they didn't get, and they go online and they immediately tag the company, and then you see people that have nothing to do with the situation coming in and saying, "Oh yeah, that's how they are, that's how they do things." All of this, or even me, even my sister, even my auntie, even my neighbor, all of that. So if it's not properly handled, these are some of the things that we tend to face. And that is why as HR, the key at every time is for us to reduce, if we cannot eliminate, is to reduce to the barest minimum any risk that the company might be open to in the event of a layoff. That is one of the reasons we are there, to reduce every risk if we can't eliminate that the company might be open to in the event of what? Of layoffs. Now, to do this, we need to have a fair understanding. We need to have a proper understanding of what the legal and ethical requirements for us are in this kind of situation. Already, we know that when we talk about legal requirements, we're talking about what requirements according to the law, the supervising law of the land, your constitution, and in Nigeria's case now, the 1999 constitution as amended, and also what the Labor Act has implemented. So all of that those are the things that we need to keep abreast of. We need to constantly, every time, go back to as reference because, and also nowadays, we also need to keep up with judgments from the Nigerian industrial courts. Because what? In law, aside from the written out law within the constitution, the judicial precedents, that is what the rulings from the courts also form a part of the law. So a law that was enacted, for instance, in 2001 might not still be as relevant in 2025 because what there probably been a judicial proceeding in 2021 that has further interpreted or amended or in a way slightly adjusted what the 2001 law says. But you cannot apply it as 2001 and now say, oh, that is what has been in the law. No, if you're taken to court, the court is going to look at what was the last judgment, if any, on that situation, and it will rule according to that. Except you're now able to do what? To present facts of the case that negates what has been ruled previously, and then the judge will look at it and now come back with a ruling that might either support or further interpret the previous ruling. So we need to always have what? A fair understanding. We need to always keep abreast. Every time we need to do many things like this, every time, even when we need to offer certain type of contracts, we need to still go back and read again. We might have read it before, yes, but we still need to go back and read it again just to keep ourselves on top of information as we go, and then you can consult. That's why in many organizations we have a legal team. And for many of us that are on the HR mentorship platform, what do we do? You can drop your questions in there. You might not get it answered immediately because, yeah, everybody is trying to catch up with their day, ensure that they finish their day-to-day tasks. But somebody will definitely answer. You can just keep following up till somebody answers your question and elaborates further for you. And ethical requirements just speaks to what? The fair, equal treatment of everybody when we are carrying out layoffs. That is what it speaks to. It speaks to what? The fair and equal treatment of everyone. So in this presentation, in this training, we'll be looking at what are those legal and ethical requirements to us as HR and even the company where layoffs are concerned. Like I mentioned, layoffs really speaks more to redundancy. And redundancy tends to happen when what? You suddenly, maybe you've over-recruited over a long period of time. So you now have more workers than work needed, or you've now automated your process. Your process that used to be so mundane, that used to need 20 hands to complete, there has now been little automation here and there that has now reduced that 20 hands to 10. you know definitely you cannot keep those 10. And if you cannot find somewhere within the company to put them, what happens? You need to what? To lay them off. Now we'll be looking at some of the legal considerations where this is concerned. Now, the first thing is what the Nigerian Labor Act Cap L1 LFN 2004. This is the Nigerian labor law, as some of us um, popularly know it as. The Nigerian Labor Act Cap L1 LFN 2004. Really, as HR professionals, I think this literally should be our Bible, not just our company policies and handbook. This should be our Bible. It should be what we use every day or every time we need to carry out any function. As much as there are certain things missing from, or I'll not say missing, as much as there are certain things that are not fully explained within the labor law, you will still find that it touches everything. Leave, sick leave, whatever, dismissals, employment, working hours, wages, it touches every aspect of the employer-employee relationship. So this really should be this should be our Bible as HR professionals. Now, what are some of the requirements? Now, it's clearly states as what employment terms. Employers, you are mandated as an employer. There is room for verbal agreement, but in many times, what really would hold water, what really will hold ground is what is written agreements. Written agreements that states out everything about the relationship. It doesn't need to be bulky. It doesn't need it just needs to be detailed and concise as possible. So you need in that agreement, the written agreement, what in your employment terms are stating out details like what the pay is going to be. And the pay is forward for the exchange of services. The company has created a role within the company, employed somebody. Now the person is coming to come and carry that function, carry that duty. Now, how much are you paying that person? How long is the person working for? How many hours will the person be working for in a day? Is it a short-term work? Is it a long-term work? Is it indefinite? Now, does the person have leave days? Does he have leave days? Does he have maternity leave? And quite recently, what paternity leave? Does he have sick leave, casual leave, bereavement leave? All of those leave days, are they included? And you don't necessarily need to now state that, oh, you have maternity leave in the contract of employment, but you can just state that they are leave. And then there is the staff handbook within the company that will now detail all of those things to the latter for anyone that employed in the company. And then what the notice period is, what the notice period is for when the person would like to leave. Even in the Nigerian labor law, there is room for one notice period. It is just not as long as what we have in many organizations. I think if you have worked in an organization for 1 year, according to the labor law, what is written in there, you have to give 1 day notice after you worked for 1 year. But definitely we know that we will not want to tie anyone to just a 1 day notice. It will leave a lot of gap for us. That's why at the very least, for many positions, we have what 2 weeks to 1 month, 1 month to 2 months, 2 months to 3 months, depending on the seniority and the crucial nature of the person's role to the organization. And normally these employment terms must be clearly stated out, must be agreed upon by both parties within the first 3 months of the employee starts date. But many times, what do? We already sort that out before the employee resumes. On rare occasions, do you have people who resume without an offer letter? On rare occasions, I've been in that kind of situation before where I started in the company and I did not have an offer letter. They are sent one, but I sent it back for them to make some adjustment. But by the time I was meant to resume, I had not gotten it. The MD as at that time was very, very shocked and was like, okay, how do you even resume? And I told him, I was like, see, I just know that there is nothing there is nothing that we can there's nothing that can go wrong. I just believe that nothing could have gone wrong. And I think I signed my contract about a month after resuming there, which according to labor law, we are both still in line. Okay, and then also it states what the wages. Wages must be paid in legal tender. Legal tender means what in the currency recognized by the law of the land where the company and employee reside and work from. So you can't, for instance, be working in Nigeria and you're paying me in francs in Nigeria. You can't be paying me in francs. You pay me in the legal tender of the country. I know now that for some of us, now begs the questions. Okay, what about expatriates? If the law is saying that I must pay in legal tender, what about expatriates? Those are where exceptions um what's it called, exceptions exist. And also because to a very large extent, dollars, euros are still a form of legal tender within Nigeria because what we use it for exchange within the country. And even for some operations within the country, we still use those currencies. So we can still term it as legal tender, but you cannot pay me in cowries. You can't pay me in cowries. That is not a legal tender anymore in Nigeria. And then also, by law, you are to ensure that what there is workplace safety and welfare. Employers have a duty to provide that. And that's why there has now been very big clampdown on companies that do not have fire extinguishers or um, protocol for emergencies, emergency exits. Investigations will go into all of this. I'm very sure you are very conversant with the news of recent. There has been an unfortunate incident happened during the course of the week so far, where a fire had gutted an office building, a plaza, and then we had people jumping out from the window. There'll be an investigation into that. Okay, why are people jumping out the window? Is it that there is no provision for emergency exit? Or do they know? Were they not taking through the emergency drills? All of that process. So if we're doing emergency trainings, fire drills, fire trainings, without documenting it, please let us start documenting it. Documentation is the saving grace of every HR person because that is what we always fall back to. So we need to document all of the training, the people that attended training when we did it, and how we carried out that training. And so, yes, employers have a duty to provide work and take reasonable care for the safety of their employees and under certain conditions, yeah, even to provide free transport for those traveling long distances from their usual place of work. From their usual place of work. So that means if my usual place of work is Victoria Island, and because of work, I need to now go to Ibadan. By law, you are to provide me with free transportation or money in lieu of free transportation. So that means if you can't provide me with a bus or a car, you have to give me money in lieu of that. Now, redundancy and termination. The Act provides a framework for fair and legal handling of the redundancy, ensuring transparent communication, adherence to guidelines to protect the rights of the employees. There was a time when I found myself within the cycle of fellow HR professionals. I think we're about 10 or so, I think about 10 of us, and we're just discussing. We now fell into talking about many of the recent judgments as at that time from the industrial court, and we're like, the way industrial court is going is as if they are pro-employees. I can understand why they are that way because many times we've seen over the years where employers exploit employees. So yes, they will tend to defend the underdogs, but there have been situations where they have actually stood behind the employers to say no. The employer has done all they could in this situation. You are now just trying to what? To take advantage of them. And also it sets the minimum terms and conditions for workers, the minimum standards. Like I had mentioned, according to the labor law, what you see in the labor law, when you read down to where the leave is concerned, you will see that after a year of working, the law prescribes 1 day notice. It's just a prescription, it's just an advice. It is just saying, okay, that is the minimum anybody should be able to give. So you can always set 2 weeks or more. And it covers aspects like holidays and sick leave, as well as maternity leave for female employees, and quite recently, really, paternity leave because of different rulings, and even some states have now incorporated that as part of their policy. Now, let me say here that by law, it is illegal for employees to be at the workplace on public holidays without being paid overtime. I'll leave that there and I'll run to the next points. Employer obligations beyond written statements and safety, employers are responsible for providing work and paying wages. Employers are responsible for what providing work. So if you are responsible for providing work and paying the wages of the employee, that means if you do not provide the work, you still have to pay the wages because it is your responsibility. The person is available and ready to pay to work, but you're not the one, you're the one that is not providing, or you're the one that is not giving the necessary and needed tools to to carry out his or her function. So, yes, now let's get down into it. The legal considerations when we have to carry out layoffs as HR in organization. Let me reiterate that layoffs really mostly speaks to redundancies, and redundancies speak to a large scale when we have to let go of a large number of people in organization due to different reasons, automation of process, we have overhired, or we had, let's say, for instance, there had been an arm of the business that was incorporated, and then for unforeseen circumstances, that arm of business can no longer operate because what there is no service to render in that place. At that moment, everybody that is in that business has become redundant. The business itself is now redundant. There is a need to now do what? To carry out a mass retrenchment. Yes, so some legal considerations. The first thing the courts every time will look at is what the contract. What does the contract state? What does each person's contract states before it's now being looked at as a class action? Class action is when you are really having five people under the same kind of suit. So yes, what does this person contract states by way of when you need to terminate or dismiss me, or when you need to, when you need to terminate or dismiss me? What does my contract say? Does my contract say I'm entitled to certain wages? Does my contract say I'm entitled to certain benefits? If it's not in the contract, the next thing they'll be looking at is what does your handbook, what does your policy say as regards termination, and even redundancies for companies that have gone as far as incorporating that into their handbook and their policies. That what does that person's contract says, and even collective agreements. You'll find this more in organizations where they have unions. You find this more in organizations where they have unions. That's the collective agreements. That's the agreement between the employer, the organization, and the union. You find it more there because a company without union or an industry without union, definitely there can be collective agreements. It is agreements per individual, except there is maybe we're going by way of using the policy, but really it talks more to those in a unionized kind of environment. Like I've already mentioned, what your HR and other company policies state where redundancy, when having to lay off somebody is concerned. Now they're going to look at, okay, all of this thing that you have stated. You stated that, oh, you're going to go about it this way. If there is a need to terminate, um, or not to hire somebody, or even if you hire, the person's already or maybe been hired, and let's say, for instance, now comes back and has hepatitis. What does your policy say? And what does your policy say to that? Is this policy the way it has been stated out because the person has hepatitis, you're trying to now dismiss this person, or a group of people have now contracted hepatitis, you now want to dismiss all of them? What does the policy now say, and how are you going about it? If it's being seen as discrimination under any of these provisions, the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, as amended, the Employee Compensation Act, or even the ILO conventions, if the right to live, right to work, and all of that, if it contradicts any of this, your company can be held liable. Your company can be held liable. I know now that I've mentioned these three, it now looks like, oh, apart from the labor of being a Bible, we now need to be abreast of all of this. Oh my God, how do we keep up with this? Don't fret, don't be don't be afraid. We live in the tech age now. So happy that we live in a tech age now. Just a prompt on Google or even on Chat GPT, just a prompt there about what you're looking for, trust me, it is going to bring it out immediately, and you can quickly just read on all of it. So yes, now at the point of redundancy, when you need to let go of a large group of people, there are certain benefits that is um needed, or there are certain benefits that they're entitled to, whether you have a policy around it or not. One, one thing the court looks at is that redundancy is an involuntary action, or let me say, is an involuntary termination or involuntary loss of job on the part of the employee. The employee still wants to work, really. It is not his or her fault that now there is no space for him or her, or there is no requirement for his or her skills. You are employed at one point based on that. So now that the person is being laid off due to redundancy, there are benefits that must be accrued to them. And in a situation where you just say, oh, because we don't have a redundancy policy at all for this position, for anybody at all. So what I'm going to do is just this, see, at the end of the month, we'll pay you 1 month salary and then you leave. The courts can look at it that that is an unfair treatment to the employee, because what the employee actually still wants to work, but you just don't have any work to give him or her anymore. That is when do not have to go and start calculating different damages, emotional damages, all those kind of things. So if the person has still been in your employment, so now how much would they have earned? All those kind of things. And that's why I advise that as organizations, if we do not have a redundancy policy or something that speaks to that, we after this, I think we should all just try and sit down and come up with something. You don't have to pay so much, but you can pay something to prevent yourself from having to pay millions in damages to an employee. I'm not saying you're going to one day have to lay off a large number of people. I'm only saying as HR, we always just have to be prepared, because we live in a very volatile and ever evolving economy, and even workforce that is see as it is now. Yeah, the statutory redundancy benefits and company specific packages that the court will look at. And those packages will now cover, okay, health-wise, what is the plan for this person? Because all of a sudden now you're throwing the person off HMO, so they have no access to a health cover. That's on one side. They used to receive allowances, and now they're no longer. There is leave allowance. There is was different allowance that they used to receive, housing allowance and all those kind of things. And all of a sudden, you are taking that off of them, because the way the court says is that you've exposed them to a certain lifestyle while working for you. So you cannot just immediately or suddenly remove them from it. That is how the court is going to see it. So they are looking at what are those packages that you've put in place to just even cushion the effect of this layoff. They are not saying don't lay them off, but they are also saying what have you done to cushion it to them. And then now we'll be looking at what are the notification requirements by law when we are carrying out layoffs. Labor Act, Section 20, like I've mentioned already, I'm now going into an aspect of the labor law to just pick out some things where redundancy is concerned. Now, employers must inform the relevant trade union or workers' representative about the reasons and the extent of any anticipated redundancy. Some redundancies just happen for a specific period. Like for instance, during the COVID period, some companies just said, okay, well, for now we're not going to be paying, but once COVID lifts, we would what's it called? We will now start, we will start work and we'll start paying. So that was what a period of time. But other redundancies are what permanent. You're letting them go entirely because you don't see that business coming back. But there has to be what relevant. There needs to be proper notifications to the union or the workers' representative. Now, in events where there are no unions or workers' representative, the notification has to go to each person, one after the other. You don't just do a blanket notification and just send a mail, a broadcast message to everybody. Dear staff, please note that after this email, if you're unable to access your email anymore, that means you've been laid off. Thank you. best regards. No, you don't do that. So you have to reach out to each person, one after the other, explaining to them why you need, why you are laying them off. And if it's permanent or just for, let's say, 3 months, for 6 months, or for a year, you need to explain to them, you need to let them know individually. And then the selection criteria when you are carrying out layoffs, it has to be fair. It has to be fair. And one of the recommendations is what? LIFO, last in, first out. That means what? The last people to come in to the company. If you're carrying out a layoff in 2025, that means you will start from those that joined in 2025. This is October, this is September now. You start from people that joined in 2025, from September up to January. You start with them first. You don't go and start from someone that has been in the company 10 years ago. Because the position of the law, the position of the court on that kind of situation is that this person has been working for you for so long, you did not have any reason to terminate. Why is it that all of a sudden when you need to lay off staff, that is the person that you now feel is best for you to terminate? They will see it as a targeted layoff, as if you specifically chose that person to lay them off. So what the recommendation is, what? Last in, first out. And then when you're even doing that, what you now need to consider is what you need to look at: different factors. The merits, on what basis are you now choosing this person? Is it that this skill, the skill that this person has or this group of people have, is no longer needed in the organization? I'm not going to lean at any point whatsoever. Is that why I'm choosing them? What are their abilities and how reliable have they been in the system? These are just four key things. There are other factors to also take note of and look into. But really, you start from the last in and you work your way up to as much as you need to go. I know in some organizations, when they've had to do this kind of thing, they've looked at, okay, especially where they can no longer pay their payroll, their wage bill has now gotten so high that they don't see the sustainability in the next 6 months. Many organizations have looked at it and then just chosen to let go of one person at the top and pay that millions to the person and move on. And then the company is able to Zero's able to what? To stay balanced. I've seen such examples when it happens, where they just unpicked certain heads of departments, especially when they find out that there are still other people, like what the head of department or manager is doing. The three people within the department, if they split those roles to them and probably just pick one person to lead, the company will be fine, the department will be fine. So sometimes what they just do, they just pick from the top. That can work, but if you're doing at a large scale, you need to do what? The LIFO, last in, the first out. I had mentioned that what redundancy is involuntary and is a permanent loss. Is involuntary. Involuntary in the sense that what the staff did not choose to be laid off. They didn't choose to no longer have anything doing. They didn't choose to no longer be able to work. It's involuntary. And then Section 20 of the Labor Act, it defines redundancy as an involuntary and permanent loss of employment resulting from an excess of manpower within the system. Excess of manpower, that means you already have so many people working, doing one job, and you're looking like, okay, why do I have 20 people that are doing the same thing? Let's say, for instance, you have a digital marketing team, and you're taking a stock of them, and you're seeing that, oh, I have 10 digital marketing executives. Why do I have 10? What are they doing? What are the activities that we have that makes us to have 10? Do we need to cut down to 5 and probably put 2 on like a contract need to work kind of basis? Those are the things that you look at when you already have like excess man manpower. Then there's a lack of so the Labor Act does not clearly state out what it does not it does not clearly state out, okay, these are some of the things that you need to pay them. Like I mentioned before, they're not looking at, okay, you need to pay them this, you need to pay them that, but they're just looking at how fair are you in treating them. That's why they expect that employers will use their best endeavors. That means you use your best interest, your best how do I put this now? your best intent when laying off staff. You use your best intent towards to come up with something with a package that actually softens the blow to them. You just look for something, you just come up with something, and something that can be in the way of, okay, we'll pay you your net salary for the next 2 months, or we'll pay you your gross salary of 2 months once, just something to cushion the blow to them. Now, also for large scale redundancies, you have to notify the Ministry of Labor. The Ministry of Labor needs to be notified when you are conducting a very large scale layoff. You have to notify the Ministry of Labor. Now, the Ministry of Labor is one that's now going to look at each and every step. They will now start asking you, okay, why do you need to do this? Why are you going about this? Is there no alternative to this? Okay, now you have said there's no alternative. You've given us the reason. What is your plan for these people? How long is this meant to last? Is it a short term, or is it a long term? Is it permanent? How long is it meant to last? You've told us now. Okay, fine, no problem. You say it's permanent. What is your plan for these people? Would there be a soft landing for them? That is why the Ministry of Labor needs to be notified. And also, whenever they get to hear about this kind of things, they will pay the organization a visit to find out, okay, you did this kind of thing, you didn't notify us. We now want to see your entire process. And at that point, it may not be as easy or as comforting as when you are the one that goes to meet them. Now, there has to be consultations with employee representatives or union. So like I've mentioned before, in organizations, in industries where you have unions or employee representatives, for organizations that are no union, I know there are some that have like an employee engagement committee, so to say. So you need to also notify them, consult with them, and just have them in the picture of things. And to ensure the aim of it is what, to ensure fairness on the part of the organization. Now, severance pay and benefits. Severance pay and benefits. Now, redundancy benefits under the Labor Act provides benefits as agreed in the contracts. So the benefits as agreed in the contracts, individual contracts of the employees you're laying off. If it's an immediate layoff, which most times it always is, if the contract says you're meant to give 1 month notice or payments in lieu, that payments in lieu must go out. The payments in lieu must go out. Then in industry norms, if you find yourself in an industry that by general practice, there are already, let's say there are 10 companies in that industry, which I know considerably every industry has more than 10. There are 10 companies in that industry, and 8 of these industries in the past, when they've had to do layoffs, they followed a certain pattern that is very nature. They've calculated certain level, certain range in benefits payments to the employees. You, as the organization that now wants to carry out the layoff, you need to follow that template that they are followed. You need to follow that template that they are followed. You necessarily might not pay the exact amount that they have paid to all of those employees, but you have to be within range of what the industry standard and norm is. Now, when you're laying off, you are meant to what? Pay all accrued wages, all leave, all bonuses and allowances promptly. You are not holding on to it. You're not holding on to any bonus. You're not holding on to any financial obligations to them. You are meant to pay it promptly and ensure that what you settle every payment um that is owed to their pensions. The pensions administration system has now become very, very seamless with the introduction of payment platforms into the pensions administration, into the pension sector. So it's easier now for us to just make direct payment to once the pension number is correct, you can easily just make payments and you're done with it. But if that is not what you're doing, that okay, after 2 months, finance will not gather the money and now pay into each of the respective employees' accounts, you are meant to settle that before they leave. Let me note that this also is something I am meant to do whenever you're terminating or dismissing individual employees. You're meant to actually settle all financial obligations from your own end, because even you, as employers, you expect them to settle every financial obligation before they leave. So you're also meant to return that treatment. That is the fairness that the court and law is always looking out for. Now, provide certificates of service to assist future employment. Why the law is saying that you should do this, why the law is saying you do this, is because, like I said, redundancy for the law is they understand that it is involuntary. The employee still wants to work. It's not as if they are not good enough. It's not like they're not good enough. They still want to work. They are still working for you. If there was no need to have laid them off, if your system had not been automated, if you have not overhired, they would have still been working. So they are recommending that what you provide them with a certificate of service. Certificate of service can be like a recommendation letter saying, "Oh, this person has worked with us for the past 5 years. He has been this, he has been that, yada yada yada." We are recommending them for any position within your organization. Now, ethical practice, some firms extend health insurance for 3 to 6 months post the layoffs. They extend the health insurance. They just keep them on the health insurance for 3 to 6 months, just so it's not like an immediate, just something that just keeps them till just something that keeps them afloat, just helps them while they are looking for a new place to work. So we've been able to look at some of the legal considerations when layoffs are being conducted. Now we'll be looking at some of the ethical considerations. I'll take a pause and just let it know that you can, if there are any questions while this is going on, before we get to this section for questions, we can drop in the chat box. I'll try to take a pause and move on. If I get notification, I'll try to take a pause and take some questions in between before we get to the question section. But if you're still fine with waiting until then, that is okay, still okay by me. All right, so some ethical considerations when carrying out layoffs. The first is that you are meant to treat the employees with dignity and respect during notification, with dignity and respect. You're meant to treat them with dignity and respect. You're not meant to treat them shabbily. You're not meant to talk to them anyhow. You're not meant to just be like, "Oh, see, Alpha, we're laying you off. Come and be going." No, you still need to treat them with dignity and respect that they deserve. You need to be sympathetic and be empathetic of them. Now, there has to be transparent communication about the business reasons for layoff. You have to be transparent. There's no hiding any information here. You're not keeping some information to them. This is not a need to know basis of information. So you need to let them know, is it that letting you go because of economic downturn? They have thought that, oh, the economy will project better, we'll have gotten some level of profits that will keep the business going. But however, we've been recording losses over a period of time, and this has really put a big dent. We've tried to save costs operationally. That's why we started doing hybrid, or we started doing hybrid, and we ensure that by 4 o'clock, we change our working hours from 9 to 4, ensure that by 4 o'clock, the gen goes off, everybody needs to leave the building. We've tried to do all of that. However, we still find ourselves in the red, and we've looked at it, and there is a need to reduce our workforce. Are we restructuring? Or businesses are now becoming one, and when we're changing it to this, like in the case of when banks do mergers, I know largely when banks do mergers, most times they don't let go of anybody at all. But however, there are some cases, there are some departments where the skills are not just meeting up with what the new direction is, what the new goal is. Those people need to be let go of. So there has to be that clear communication with them. Oh, we're automating all of our processes now. We no longer need human input in this area, which is where your skills lie. We no longer need human input in this area, or because we've had to automate this part of production, it eliminates what you do here, here, and here. And due to that, we will need to let you go. Now, you provide support to them, career counseling, training for redeployment. Even sometimes you can go as far as helping them to get a job somewhere else, talking to outsourcing firms. During the course of my career, I've had to work on a layoff in an organization I had worked in, and this was one of the things that we actually did. I know that for about a month before we officially communicated to everybody, we were looking for outsourcing firms that could safely and adequately help us with placing people that we needed to let go of in new employments. So we had conversation with them. We told them, okay, these are some of the needs, these are some of the skills, these are the people that we want to let go of, these are their skills, their current skills. Even you start to get them to update. Maybe they've had courses that they've done that they've not let us know. We used start to get that update, and we just tried. You, we know how recruitment is not always as smooth sailing as that. Now, the time and manner of communication, the time and manner. So it has to be face to face or even virtual, but it has to be one on one. It should not be like I've said earlier, it should not be just an email to everybody and saying, if you the their staff, please find attached list of staff that are no longer working with us. Please, the next line, please note if you find your name of this list, you are to return all company property with you forthwith. No, that is not ethical. That is not treating them with respect. That is inhumane. So what are you meant to do? You're meant to have a face-to-face with them, or if you can't schedule a face-to-face, maybe because you're in Lagos and that person is in Zambia, you can have a virtual meeting with them. All right, I'll take a pause to take a question from Blessing. Blessing said, good evening. Thank you for the insightful session so far. I want to ask if in a situation where staff is being disengaged due to misconduct against company policy, e.g., for example, theft, it is best practice to give a vague letter stating we no longer need your services or you state the reasons for the disengagement. Please state the reason on the letter of disengagement. States the reason on the letter of disengagement. Because when you are vague in your letter of disengagement, the employee can present it as anything other than the truth to anyone. And anyone in this instance can be a charge and bill lawyer, I'm sorry to lawyers, that is looking for something or that is looking for the next
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. So let's just exercise a little patience while the facilitator returns to the call. I think his network experienced some glitch there. So let's just exercise a little patience, please. Thank you.
The school anthem. Kingdom heritage.
That is, and the reason for that, so you need to write it out. You need to spell it out why they have been let go. You need to also what? You need to spell it out. Okay. So keeping on, now you protect the employees privacy. So you don't disclose individual situations publicly. You don't disclose it publicly. You don't let everybody know that um you don't just let everybody know that, oh, we're letting everybody go. No, you have to what? You have to protect their individual privacy. You don't, when you're not communicating to everyone, you're not putting there that, oh, we're letting them go because their skills is not up to, no. You can just put it there that, oh, what was it called? We did a restructure for the public communication to every other person. You protect what? The privately. Just put there, well, we are letting, we had to do a restructure of the system and automation, which has now made for certain roles to no longer be needed. We are very sorry to see these people go. However, they will no longer be working with us going forward. Now, Hillary is asking to the explanation I was giving that do I mean the phrase your services no longer required is not appropriate? It is appropriate and is inappropriate. When it becomes inappropriate is when it is just the entire phrase that you put there. Why is the service no longer required? There's a reason why the service is no longer required. So why? Why do we no longer require the service? In law, see, one of the things about the law is very, very straightforward. It is black and white. And it likes to leave no room for ambiguity because it can be interpreted in any way. So you need to be very clear. I'm not saying terminate someone for fraud and then you now go and paste it on, let's say, the company's public notice and now say you have terminated the person for fraud. I'm not saying so. But the private communication between employer and employee, it needs to be there. Like I was saying before, I was kicked off due to network. It can be interpreted anyhow if you don't state the reason. And you don't expect an employee that was terminated, even for wrongdoing, to be truthful when relaying the reason for termination. You do not expect it. And it is what is signed that the law is going to back up. You will not have to come and start explaining a whole lot. So why go through that? Why not just what? Cover every basis immediately. Now, in the case of when we are doing redundant layoffs, we have to limit rumors by there being clear internal communication before external announcements. So that means what? Before we go out to announce, before we start telling clients, before we are putting out press releases, there needs to be a clear internal communication in the organization. Mind you, earlier on in the presentation, I had said when we do not handle layoffs the way we are meant to, we leave room for um, employees to have a sort of fear towards the system because they are uncertain. They don't know if they are next. They don't know what the criteria is to even be laid off. So we need to be able to quickly limit it and eliminate rumors as much as possible by having clear internal communication before we go out to announce if we need to do so. Now, we need to avoid public embarrassment. That means you have to notify employees before press releases, especially in cases where there is a possibility of the press probably coming to hound employees or coming to camp at the organization's gates. Employees need to know. They need to know. They need to be notified and told that, okay, this is what we're going to be doing, and there's a possibility that this and this will happen. We just want to let you know ahead of time. Now, some more ethical considerations. So for internal, ensure that the managers, the employees, and the unions receive consistent messaging. That means what? They are consistently kept up to date, they are consistently kept abreast of what is going on. As much as possible, if you can even do it step by step, like step by step, it is not too much there's no over communication when this is concerned. There is no over communication. So ensure that what there is consistent messaging updates to relevant parties. And then when you now have to go external, that means informing your customers, your suppliers, the regulators, and even the media, inform them so that what there is a vote of confidence on the organization. They can say that because he who has come to the table with clear hands would not hide information. Mind you, you're not necessarily divulging company secrets. You're not necessarily divulging company secrets. Let's say, for instance, a scenario now, there has been a restructure of an arm of the business, and that restructure is going to lead to what? To an expansion on the part of the business, like a big expansion on the part of the business. You can communicate that oh, we had to collapse this, we had to collapse this arm of the business and this arm of business to bring it together, reshape it, redirect and refocus it to now become this. For many of us that always follow bank measures, we will see that there's so much information when all of this is happening, but at the same time, there's very little information. So much information in the sense that we know what is going on. We know when they're at the point of, oh, the board are meeting. We know. We know when both boards of both companies are meeting. We know. We already know they're meeting. They're trying to decide on what to do. We know when they are trying to now, let's say, decide on, oh, are we changing name? Are we changing operation? All those kind of things. We have all those information, but many informations we also don't have because there are still some company secrets that must not be let out. But subsequently, we know what is going on, and we are not even working in the organization. Now, in the case of redundancy, it has to be taken like a project. So there has to be you coordinate communications between the HR, the legal, and the payroll teams. Now, for organizations that has all of this broken down into different, but if you're as HR, you wear all of these hats, kudos to you. So by the time the HR, the legal, and the payroll, they all sit down because the payroll is one that's going to help you in managing communication, even internally and externally. Even internally and externally, the payroll will help you. The legal will ensure that step by step, everything that you are doing, you are following the tenets of the law as regards this. Now, address the morale and job security concerns from different employees because even as much as you're communicating to everyone, there will still be people that have that survivor syndrome. Survivor syndrome just speaks to, oh, am I going to be next? What do I need to do so that they don't come for me also? Is my job safe? So these are how, if they now do that restructuring tomorrow now, it maybe is my own job that is going to be next. So you need to address what the job security concerns and the morale of the employees. Now, reassure the remaining staff about the company's stability and future plans. So that is where town halls, departmental meetings, one-on-ones, like already I've mentioned, ensure that managers, because the managers are also what your first line of communication with all of these people. Ensure that what they know and they are also reiterating it to each employee. You can even have one-on-ones with certain employees in different departments that you've seen and notice that over time, people in their department or even outside of the department tend to listen to them. Every organization has one or two or more individuals like that. So reassure the remaining staff about the company being stable and that the future plans of the company is as that the future plans has them in it. They are still a part of what the plans are for the company. Now, provide channels for feedback from the employees you're letting go of, the ones that remain. Provide counseling for everybody because even people who are still within your system, if their morale is affected, their confidence in the company is affected, they need counseling to probably get back to it. I know counseling is largely a very new thing in the Nigerian sector because African people don't go for counseling. We bottle it up. We bottle it up, but recently there has been more expressions in that aspect. Now, provide workload adjustment because yes, already when this happens, when redundancy happens and then people need to leave, certain workload now will need to be given to new people. So you let them know what it's going to be like. Oh, we'll be adding these aspects to your work, we're adding these aspects to what you do, we are enriching your role to this, or due to this person not being here anymore, or adding this, we are now giving you a new role that says this and adding one person under you. All of that, you need to just provide all of that. So I've written out some examples, just as vague as possible. Like I had mentioned, I'll try as much as possible not to mention company names uh, during the course of this, but in 2016, a bank was faced with sanctions for mass dismissal without prior notifications to regulators by way of the unions, even the Labor Commission. There was no relevant notification to them. So what happened was they had done a mass retrenchment, but they didn't notify. And then when the regulators got to hear about it, they sanctioned the company, the bank, and also still went ahead to add some other benefits and damages for the staffs that were laid off. Now, an oil company in Lagos avoided litigation by using clearly documented competency-based criteria. So this oil company now, at the time when they were laying off, they had a clear written out criteria that when the regulators read through it, they saw that okay, there was fairness and justness in the execution of this layoff. Now, sorry. Yeah. So a telecoms firm handled layoffs privately, but they still handled it privately because at the time of when the layoff was happening, we really didn't know. But what made us to now know was they released a public statement, but that was after they had let both the staffs that were laying off and those that were left behind, they had properly spoken with them, made them understand the reasons, and even provided cushion for those who needed it. Then they now what? Made a public statement to everyone saying this is what we have done and this is why we have done it. A manufacturing company in Ogun State issued a well-prepared statement to all stakeholders, reducing panic. Because one other thing that layoffs do is it sends a message to shareholders, to stakeholders saying, are we sure that this company is stable? If you're not very careful, what will happen is that a lot of shareholders will start pulling funds out of the organization immediately. And by the time you're losing that share capital, the company is going to feel the brunt. So because there was a well-prepared statement that was issued to everybody, it reduced the panic to a very, very large extent. Now, after a 10% workforce reduction, an Abuja-based consultancy held town halls and morale improved. So they have reduced the workforce by 10%, but there were town halls at different intervals with different teams with the entire company. And the owners of the company they kept reiterating, this is why we did this, this is the new plan. Everybody that is here, you still have a role to play. Don't be afraid, your job is secured. And with that, the morale of those who were left increased greatly. And then an oil and gas firm in Port Harcourt provided redundancy packages plus job placement assistance, maintaining goodwill, and in the process avoided litigation. So the package was juicy. We know that oil and gas, they like juicy packages. And then they helped them in getting jobs in other organizations. And because of that, people that were leaving that you think would normally bear ill will, they felt good. They were happy with the company. And then nobody went to court to say, oh, I was laid off unjustly, even though I had the relevant skills, I was still laid off. Nobody did that. So yes, I just compiled those examples just to show us why we have to do all of those legal and ethical considerations when we are carrying out layoffs. Now, this is just some checklists to guide us in the events that we need to lay off staff. First is what? Know the laws before acting. Consult with legal and HR experts, read up on the law, search on Google, search on ChatGPT on what the next step, what you're about to do. Then you plan and document the criteria for layoff. You plan it before you carry it out. And then document what are the criteria, what are you looking out for, why, what are those things that will keep somebody, and what are those things that will make somebody have to be laid off. Now, communicate transparently and compassionately to all affected parties. Transparently, be truthful, be open with them as much as you can, and show compassion. People know when you are just faking it. People have a very rough idea when you're just faking it. They can tell. Show compassion towards them. Now, offer them support where possible. Where it is possible, offer them support. If you can help in career transition, in job placements, please help them as much as you can. Now, review and improve the process after implementation to learn lessons. So review the process, what are the feedback that I had gotten, what are some of the things, the way people felt, what people said. Review all of this and then use it to improve the process. Now, maintain detailed records of layoff criteria, the communications, have records of it, the severance payments, how much was paid to each person, have record of it. Now, the consultation minutes, like those who you consulted with, the legal, the HR experts, the unions, the representatives, everybody you consulted with have a detailed record of what was discussed in it by way of minutes. Now, store signed acknowledgements of redundancy notices to protect against disputes. Now, you've given them the notice, they've signed it. This acknowledgement copy, please keep it. Keep it in record, on cloud, in physical, but just ensure that there is somewhere that it is stored. Now, good records provide evidence in labor disputes or inspections by Ministry of Labor. In the event where there might be a labor dispute, maybe by way of being taken to court or even a visit from the Ministry of Labor, it is a good record that helps to ensure avoiding any form of litigation or damages to be paid. Now, in summary, layoffs are challenging. They are not the easiest. It is not the easiest of tasks. It is one of the hardest things that as HR we are tasked with. Sometimes it is of one of the hardest things that we are tasked with. So there's a question from Michael. Michael says, is it right to publicize juicy packages of the affected employees during redundancy processes. No, please keep that confidential. Keep that confidential. The package, please keep that confidential. That should be between the HR and then the management and the employees that were laid off. Please keep that confidential. Thank you. Compliance protects against lawsuits. Compliance by way of following what the law states in the Labor Act, ILO conventions, 1999 Constitution, Employee Compensation Act. It's compliance to all of this. It helps to protect against lawsuits. Now, ethics, that is the way we treat them, how we communicate all of this, it protects the reputation of the organization. It is the reputation of the organization that ethics protects, while legal, that is compliance, protects against lawsuits. HR and management must collaborate for fair and humane outcomes. So aside from us as HR working on this, we need to do that in collaboration with the management as much as possible. Sometimes I know by the time we are done calculating what we feel is a very fair and just severance package, the management can be like, oh, this is too expensive. But we now need to communicate to them why we need to go, why we are doing that. And the reason, we just need to communicate the reason to them and make them understand you are in effect trying to protect the company from any form of backlash, whether in the courts or on the social courts. Now, proactive planning and communication minimizes disputes. That means as much as we're doing this, we need to be proactive in planning, consider every angle, every possibility, and um, communicate where necessary and with detail as much as possible. All right. So thank you everyone once again for listening, for joining. Any questions at this time? Any questions? So I have one question from Michael again. Michael says, what about in the scenario where there's collective agreement in a unionized company? Even in unionized companies, that's why I'm saying, so at that moment where it's in unionized company, the agreement is with the union. Even they would not, I want to believe, or by legal and ethics, they would not now start speaking to individuals that are not to be laid off. They will not start speaking to them and saying, oh, that person that was laid off, we paid 5 million. Officially, though, let me say that officially they won't be doing that. So that is where confidentiality starts and ends. With the unionists, because they are the representatives of the employees that are being laid off, definitely they know what the severance package is going to be, because they also have to agree with the offering from the company. However, outside of that, please keep it confidential. You are not discussing with people that are within the company and saying, oh, that person that we laid off, we paid 5 million naira. That's a breach of confidentiality. All right. Thank you all once again. Please, any questions from anyone? Do you have questions from anyone at this time? If you have questions, we can raise our hands and I'll call on you to ask your question or even a contribution. Any questions or contribution? Okay. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all once again for joining. And I'd like to say once again, thank you, Dr. Yemi, for the privilege, for the platform to take a topic this evening. I look forward to being back once again. Okay. A question. What happens when a company refuses to issue redundancy certificates? Okay. So I had mentioned that it not necessarily has to be a certificate, it can also be a letter of reference. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a redundancy certificate, it can also be a letter of reference. All of this, letter of reference, outplacement services, it's more like an advice on how to just ensure that you're giving each of these persons that are being laid off, you're giving them ample um soft landing. That is why we do all of this. We're giving a ample soft landing because, like I had mentioned, redundancy is involuntary. If the will of the staff that is affected or the staffs that are affected are to be taken into consideration, they will still be working for the company. They will not be out of a job. They will not be looking for a new job. So that's why we do all of this. That's why we make provisions for all of these caveats, so to say now. So yeah, so in a situation where they are refusing to issue like if they have certificates, maybe that's what they're looking at, the certificate part, and they're fearing that it might open them to litigation or something. A letter of reference can also stand in because let's be factual. Any company that they end up being employed by would still ask for a reference from the last place of work, which you will still have to issue. So yeah. All right, then again. Thank you, everyone, once again. Do enjoy the rest of your evening and have a lovely night's rest. Good night, everyone.